A Loser, the philosophy of Henry David Thoreau, in a world that constantly pushes us to compete, to accumulate, to win at all costs. There's a profound wisdom in choosing to be a loser. This isn't about self-deprecation or giving up on life. Rather, it's about embracing a different set of values, a different way of measuring success and fulfillment. And perhaps no one embodies this philosophy better than the 19th century American thinker, Henry David Thoreau. Thoreau, with his retreat to Walden Pond and his advocacy for simple living, offers us a radical alternative to the rat race of modern life. He challenges us to question our assumptions about what it means to live well, to be successful, to lead a life of meaning and purpose. In a sense, Thoreau invites us to be losers in the eyes of conventional society in order to win at the game of life itself. But what does it mean to be a loser in Thoreau's sense? It means letting go of society's expectations and materialistic measures of success. It means choosing deliberate poverty over mindless accumulation. It means valuing experiences and insights over possessions and status. In short, it means losing the game that society wants us to play in order to win at the game of authentic living. Consider for a moment, what would your life look like if you stopped trying to win by society's standards? What if, instead of chasing after the next promotion, the bigger house, the fancier car, you chose to simplify your life? What if you measured your wealth not by the size of your bank account, but by the depth of your experiences and the richness of your thoughts? Thoreau writes in Walden, the mass of men lead lives of quiet desperation. How many of us can relate to this sentiment? How many of us feel trapped in jobs we don't love, relationships that don't fulfill us, lives that don't align with our deepest values? We chase after success as defined by others, only to find ourselves feeling empty and unfulfilled. But Thoreau offers us an alternative. He shows us that by stepping back from society's rat race, by choosing to lose, in conventional terms, we can actually gain something far more valuable: authenticity, freedom, and a deep connection with ourselves and the world around us. Think about it. When was the last time you sat in silence, simply observing your thoughts and the world around you? When did you last take a walk in nature without any particular destination or purpose? These simple acts, which Thoreau championed, can be revolutionary in a world that constantly demands our attention and productivity. But embracing Thoreau's philosophy isn't easy. It requires courage to go against the grain, to choose simplicity in a world that glorifies excess. It demands that we confront our own fears and insecurities, our addiction to comfort and convenience. It challenges us to ask ourselves hard questions about what we truly value and how we want to live our lives. So I ask you, what are you willing to lose in order to gain a life of meaning and purpose? What comforts, what societal approval, what material possessions are you prepared to give up in pursuit of a more authentic existence? Thoreau's example reminds us that sometimes losing can be the greatest victory of all. By losing our attachment to societal expectations, we gain the freedom to define success on our own terms. By losing our need for constant stimulation and distraction, we gain the ability to be present and find joy in simple moments. By losing our fear of solitude, we gain a deeper understanding of ourselves and our place in the world. But make no mistake, choosing to be a loser in Thoreau's sense isn't about withdrawing from the world or rejecting all aspects of society. Rather, it's about engaging with life more fully and authentically. It's about being deliberate in our choices, conscious in our actions, and true to our deepest values. As we continue to explore Thoreau's philosophy, I challenge you to consider how can you incorporate elements of his thinking into your own life? How can you simplify? How can you connect more deeply with nature and with your own inner self? How can you, in essence, choose to be a loser in order to win at the game of life? Remember, every moment presents us with a choice. We can continue to play by society's rules, chasing after external markers of success and validation. Or we can choose a different path, one that leads to a richer, more meaningful existence. The choice is yours. But as Thoreau reminds us, the price of anything is the amount of life you exchange for it. What price are you willing to pay for a life of authenticity and purpose? The alchemy of absence, transmuting societal loss into spiritual gold. As we delve deeper into Thoreau's philosophy of intentional losing, we begin to uncover a profound paradox by relinquishing our grip on society's definition of success. We often gain something far more valuable. This alchemical process of transformation lies at the heart of Thoreau's teachings, and it offers us a radical new way of approaching life in our modern, hyper-connected world. Consider for a moment the things you believe you can't live without. Your smartphone, perhaps? Your car? Your job title? Now, imagine voluntarily giving these things up. The very thought likely induces a sense of anxiety, a fear of loss. But what if in that loss, you found something greater? Thoreau's experiment at Walden Pond was precisely this kind of voluntary dispossession. He stripped away the comforts and conveniences of his time, choosing to live in a small, self-built cabin in the woods. To many of his contemporaries, this seemed like madness, a willful act of social and economic suicide. But for Thoreau, it was a path to a richer, more authentic life. I went to the woods because I wished to live deliberately. Thoreau writes, to front only the essential facts of life and see if I could not learn what it had to teach, and not, when I came to die, discover that I had not lived. This statement challenges us to question, are we truly living or merely existing? Are we so caught up in the trappings of success that we've forgotten what it means to truly be alive? In our pursuit of societal approval and material wealth, we often sacrifice our time, our health, our relationships, and our inner peace. We work long hours at jobs we don't love, to buy things we don't need, to impress people we don't like. We scroll endlessly through social media, comparing our lives to carefully curated snapshots of others, feeling increasingly inadequate and disconnected. But what if we chose to lose in this game? What if, like Thoreau, we decided to step away from the rat race and reconnect with what truly matters? This doesn't mean we all need to move to the woods, though some of us might find that appealing. Rather, it's about cultivating a Thoreauvian mindset in our daily lives. It's about choosing simplicity over complexity, presence over distraction, depth over breadth. Imagine waking up each morning not to the blare of an alarm and the immediate reach for your phone, but to the natural rhythm of your body and the world around you. Imagine spending your day engaged in work that truly matters to you, rather than simply chasing a paycheck. Imagine ending your evening in quiet reflection or meaningful conversation rather than mindless entertainment. This vision might seem like a fantasy, a luxury reserved for hermits and philosophers. But I argue that it's not only possible but necessary for our individual and collective well-being. The truth is, we're facing a crisis of meaning in our society. Despite unprecedented levels of material wealth and technological advancement, rates of depression, anxiety, and loneliness are skyrocketing. We're more connected than ever, yet we feel increasingly isolated. We have more stuff than ever, yet we feel increasingly empty. Thoreau's philosophy offers us a way out of this existential quagmire. By choosing to lose in society's game, we open ourselves up to winning in the game of life itself. But let's be clear, this path is not easy. It requires courage to go against the grain, to resist the siren call of consumerism and status seeking. It demands that we confront our own fears and insecurities, our addiction to comfort and distraction. I ask you, what are you afraid of losing? Your social status? Your sense of security? Your identity is defined by your job or possessions? Now consider what you might gain by letting these things go. Freedom. Authenticity. A deeper connection with yourself and the world around you. Thoreau writes, "The cost of a thing is the amount of what I will call life which is required to be exchanged for it." Immediately or in the long run, when we view our choices through this lens, we begin to see the true cost of our so-called success. Every hour spent at a job we hate is an hour of our life exchanged for money. Every minute spent scrolling mindlessly through social media is a minute of our life exchanged for fleeting distraction. Every ounce of mental energy spent worrying about keeping up with the Joneses is energy not spent on cultivating meaningful relationships or pursuing our true passions. But when we choose to lose these things, when we opt out of society's game, we reclaim our life force. We reclaim our time, our energy, our very selves. This is not to say that we should completely withdraw from society or reject all material comforts. Thoreau himself didn't advocate for a life of extreme asceticism. Rather, he called for a life of deliberate choices, of conscious engagement with the world. The key is to be intentional about what we let into our lives, to question every purchase, every commitment, every use of our time. Does this truly add value to my life? Does this align with my deepest values? Or am I simply doing this because it's expected of me, because it's what everyone else is doing? By asking these questions, by choosing to lose what doesn't truly matter, we create space for what does. We create space for deep thought, for genuine connection, for the kind of experiences that make life truly worth living. So I challenge you, what can you lose today? What unnecessary complexity can you strip away from your life? What societal expectation can you let go of? What fear can you confront? Remember, in the alchemy of absence, what we lose in material terms, we often gain in spiritual wealth. By choosing to be a loser in Thoreau's sense, we open ourselves up to winning the only game that truly matters, the game of living a life of meaning, purpose, and authentic joy. The subversive solitude, unearthing radical self-reliance in the wilderness of the soul. As we continue our journey through Thoreau's philosophy, we arrive at a cornerstone of his thinking, the transformative power of solitude. In our hyper-connected world, the very idea of being alone can seem frightening, even alien. We're constantly surrounded by noise, by notifications, by the incessant chatter of society. But Thoreau challenges us to embrace solitude not as a punishment, but as a pathway to profound self-discovery and spiritual growth. I never found the companion that was so companionable as solitude, Thoreau writes in Walden. This statement might seem paradoxical, even lonely, to our modern sensibilities. We're taught to fear being alone, to see it as a sign of social failure. But what if, as Thoreau suggests, solitude is actually the most faithful companion we could ask for? Consider for a moment, when was the last time you were truly alone with your thoughts? Not alone with your phone or alone with Netflix, but genuinely alone with nothing but the landscape of your own mind to explore? For many of us, the answer might be never. We fill every moment of silence with distraction, every instance of solitude with noise. But in doing so, are we losing something essential? Thoreau's retreat to Walden Pond was an exercise in radical solitude. He chose to step away from society not out of misanthropy, but out of a deep desire to know himself and the world more fully. In the quiet of the woods, away from the distractions and expectations of society, he found a clarity and depth of thought that had eluded him in more civilized settings. But here's the crucial point: Thoreau's solitude wasn't about escape or withdrawal. It was about engagement, a deeper, more intentional engagement with himself and with the natural world. In solitude, he found not emptiness but fullness, not isolation but connection. I challenge you to consider, what might you discover if you allowed yourself true solitude? What hidden parts of yourself might you uncover? What insights might emerge if you gave your mind the space to wander, to explore, to dive deep into the recesses of your own consciousness? The practice of solitude, as Thoreau lived it, is a radical act of self-reliance. It's a declaration that we don't need constant external validation or stimulation to be whole. It's an affirmation that we have within us everything we need to live a rich, meaningful life. This self-reliance extends beyond just emotional or psychological realms. Thoreau's experiment at Walden was also about practical self-sufficiency. He built his own shelter, grew his own food, met his own needs with his own hands. In doing so, he discovered a deep sense of satisfaction and connection to the world around him. Now, I'm not suggesting we all need to move to the woods and become subsistence farmers. But there's a profound lesson here about the value of developing practical skills, of understanding the basic processes that sustain our lives. In our specialized, convenience-oriented society, we've lost touch with many fundamental life skills. We've become dependent on complex systems we don't understand and can't control. What if, like Thoreau, we chose to reclaim some of that self-sufficiency? What if we learned to grow some of our own food, to repair our own possessions, to meet more of our needs with our own hands and minds? How might that change our relationship with the world around us? This kind of self-reliance isn't just practical, it's deeply spiritual. It's about recognizing our place in the web of life, understanding our dependence on the natural world, and taking responsibility for our own existence. It's about moving from passive consumption to active creation, from mindless dependence to conscious interdependence. But let's be clear, the path of solitude and self-reliance isn't easy. It requires courage to face ourselves, to confront the silence, to take responsibility for our own lives. It demands that we let go of the comfortable illusions and distractions that often shield us from the harder truths of existence. I ask you, what fears arise when you contemplate true solitude? What discomforts emerge when you consider taking more responsibility for your own needs? These fears, these discomforts, they're not signs that you're doing something wrong. They're invitations to growth, beckoning you towards a more authentic, self-reliant existence. Thoreau writes, "If one advances confidently in the direction of his dreams and endeavors to live the life which he has imagined, he will meet with a success unexpected in common hours. This success isn't measured in dollars or social status. It's measured in the depth of our self-knowledge, in the richness of our experiences, in the authenticity of our relationships with ourselves and the world around us." So how do we begin to cultivate this Thoreauvian solitude and self-reliance in our modern lives? It starts with small steps. Perhaps it's setting aside time each day for quiet reflection, free from devices and distractions. Maybe it's learning a new practical skill, how to grow vegetables, how to mend clothes, how to build something with your hands. Or it could be taking a solo trip into nature, even if it's just for an afternoon in a local park. The key is to approach these experiences with intentionality and openness. To be willing to sit with the discomfort, to push through the initial restlessness and boredom that often arise when we step away from constant stimulation. To trust that in the silence, in the solitude, we'll find not emptiness, but a deeper connection to ourselves and the world around us. Remember, the goal isn't to completely withdraw from society or to achieve some impossible ideal of total self-sufficiency. Rather, it's to cultivate inner resources, a wellspring of self-reliance that we can draw upon no matter where we are or what we're doing. It's about developing the capacity to be alone without being lonely, to be self-sufficient without being isolated. In embracing solitude and self-reliance, we're not rejecting connection or community. Paradoxically, we're often better able to connect with others when we're grounded in ourselves. We bring to our relationships not neediness or dependency, but wholeness and authenticity. So I invite you to take a step towards this subversive solitude. To carve out a space in your life for quiet reflection, for self-reliant action, for deep engagement with your own thoughts and with the natural world. In doing so, you may find, as Thoreau did, that the richest terrain to explore is the wilderness of your own soul. The radical harvest, reaping the rewards of Thoreau's countercultural wisdom. As we conclude our exploration of Thoreau's philosophy, let's distill the essence of his teachings and consider how we can apply them in our modern lives. Thoreau's call to simplify. Simplify resonates more than ever in our complex, fast-paced world. The core of Thoreau's message is this: true wealth lies not in material possessions or societal status, but in the richness of our experiences, the depth of our thoughts, and our connection to the natural world. By choosing to be losers in society's game of endless accumulation and competition, we open ourselves to winning at the game of life itself. But how do we translate this philosophy into action? It starts with conscious choices. Each day, we can ask ourselves, am I living deliberately? Am I choosing my actions based on my deepest values? Or am I simply following the crowd? Consider implementing a daily practice of solitude and reflection. Even just 15 minutes of quiet contemplation can help ground us in what truly matters. Gradually increase this time, allowing yourself to sit with the discomfort that might arise when you're not constantly stimulated. Next, look for ways to simplify your life. This doesn't mean selling all your possessions and moving to the woods, unless that calls to you. It could be as simple as decluttering your space, reducing your commitments, or cutting back on social media use. The goal is to create space, both physical and mental, for what truly matters to you. Cultivate a deeper connection with nature. Thoreau found profound wisdom in the natural world, and so can we. Make time for regular walks in nature, observing the changing seasons, the patterns of plants and animals. Even in urban environments, we can find pockets of nature to connect with. Practice self-reliance in both practical and spiritual terms. Learn new skills that increase your self-sufficiency. Simultaneously, work on developing inner resources that allow you to find contentment and meaning regardless of external circumstances. Remember, embracing Thoreau's philosophy doesn't mean rejecting all aspects of modern life or isolating ourselves from society. Rather, it's about engaging with life more intentionally and authentically. It's about choosing our own path rather than blindly following societal expectations. As you implement these practices, pay attention to the shifts that occur. You may find a growing sense of peace, a deeper connection to yourself and the world around you. You might discover new wells of creativity or a clearer sense of purpose. But be prepared for challenges too. Going against the grain of society isn't easy. You may face misunderstanding or criticism from others. You'll likely confront your own ingrained habits and fears. Remember, these difficulties are not signs of failure, but opportunities for growth. Thoreau wrote, "If you have built castles in the air, your work need not be lost, that is where they should be. Now put the foundations under them." His philosophy provides us with a blueprint for those foundations, a way to ground our highest aspirations in deliberate, authentic living. So I challenge you, how will you begin to build those foundations today? What small step can you take towards a more Thoreauvian way of life? Remember, every journey begins with a single step. And in choosing to be a loser, by society's standards, you may just find yourself winning at the game that truly matters, the game of living a life of meaning, purpose, and joy.